NASCAR has many different series across the world, from the top-of-the-ranks national series across the United States, being the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Camping World Truck Series, to some of the more, maybe not as well-known, talked about as much, or simply lower-ranked series such as the ARCA Menard Series and the Whelen Modified Tour. Hell, there's even a series all the way across the world in Europe called the Whelen Euro Series, and it's put on quite the show at times. Now, being a part of motorsports that was set up in the United States, from bootlegging and moonshiners that ran crazy in the early 1900s, when NASCAR began to show legitimacy, especially with its fan base and popularity, the counterpart of the country started stirring ideas about their own form of stock car racing. Meet Canada, a place that most fans in the United States assume isn't much of a spot for good old racing. I mean, to be fair, NASCAR did give the country some attempts in National Series racing, most notably the Xfinity Series, back at the time the Nationwide Series, running a yearly race at the Circuit Gilles-Villeneuve road course in Montreal, Quebec for several years. And the Camping World Truck Series also running their own yearly race, but instead Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Bowmanville, Ontario. Every year when these races were run, they were usually pretty spectacular and very memorable highlights that still get mentioned to this day, including the Robbie Gordon fiasco in just the first ever race in Montreal, and the crazy amount of wild finishes at Motorsport over the years. Which, to clarify, Motorsport is a nickname and former name of the track. Sadly, Circuit Gilles-Villeneuve and NASCAR chose to not partner up after 2012, and ever since, the circuit has remained a track for Formula 1 in recent years. Canadian Tire Motorsport Park has been quite recent with Truck Series competition, however, the COVID pandemic has caused races to be cancelled in the past 2 years. It just hasn't been fun for Canadians in the modern era. However, I'm here to tell you that may not be necessarily the case, because truthfully, Canada does have its own national stock car racing series that runs every year, and it does indeed have a partnership with NASCAR. It even has its own broadcasts, although maybe in a way that feels a bit undeserving. Today, we'll be discussing Canada's version of NASCAR, what it is, what its history is, and why it deserves much more attention than it currently has. Meet the NASCAR Pintys series, formerly known as CASCAR.
They both collide into the Arco and over.
Before we get into the current state of the series, how about we hop into the history first, just for some consistency. We must go back to the 1980s to begin our journey. A Canadian man by the name of Tony Novotny, bear with me on saying the name correctly whether I am or not, a 2007 inductee of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, had big ambitions, which came off a huge passion for motorsports as both a fan and a drag racer in St. Thomas, Ontario. As he became a businessman, owning a shop in Chatham and selling things such as racing wheels, he took the risk of purchasing a short track in Delaware in 1979, which was mainly a place for super late models and super modifieds around this time. After facing many challenges in the first little while as a track owner, Novotny decided to go even further with his motorsports business work. Thus, the Canadian Association of Stock Car Auto Racing, CASCAR for short, was born. His main goal was to build a base for generating attention and interest in the auto racing scene, particularly for Canada altogether. If there was a plenty of success down in the United States with NASCAR, then the opportunity to get Canada involved in a similar attitude was right there, awaiting the blow up. The main series within the organization was named the CASCAR Super Series, having an inaugural season in 1986, with some lower-end ones known as the Hobby Stock Series, the West and East Super Series for alternate divisions. Unfortunately, the West Super Series lacked consistent competitors, causing it to merge with Hobby Stock for a run of combo races throughout the years within the 1990s. The East Series, on the other hand, managed to stay alive. The Super Series remained at Delaware Speedway for 2 years, eventually expanding to new tracks across Ontario within the next 2 to 3 years, and jumping to other provinces such as Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Alberta across the 90s. The series slowly found its way onto road courses and street circuits after being mainly a thing on short tracks the first few seasons. With a need for sponsors, it was a little difficult at first as the organization was looked at as mainly regional, although staying in the minds of some businesses during the time. The attentions arrived in Season 3 from General Tire, who became the main sponsor, leaving after just 3 seasons, however, and being replaced by Budweiser, who then moved on after just 1 season, and Castrol stayed a permanent sponsor for the rest of the way. Some great consistency there, eh? One move that was used to help marketing NASCAR's beginnings was running a deal to be a part of Daytona Speedweeks between 1989 and 1991, running races at the new Smyrna Speedway in Florida. Regardless of the jumping brands, NASCAR was finding immediate success obtaining TV rights during the 90s with Raceline. Random fun fact, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park was introduced in 1991, but however, it wasn't on the road course. Nope, it was on the old Motorsport Raceway oval. Yup, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park had an oval at one point, obviously separated from the road course. It wasn't until 1998 that the series chose to race at both versions. As the 21st century rolled around, NASCAR was doing very well and gaining much attention across the country. Every year saw a consistent 10 to 12 race schedule for the Super Series, mainly providing races within the months of May to September. An average of about 60 drivers showed up every season in fields that could range from 25 to 35 cars, depending on the track and its size, of course. Lots of competition, beating and banging, and fiberglass body shell cars, unlike NASCAR's steel-bodied shells, that had a popular look to them. Canada had its fair share of the sport alongside its counterpart in the United States. That was until breaking news came out in November 2004. Owner Tony Novotny confirmed that NASCAR was in the middle of an agreement with NASCAR to be purchased outright. Earlier that year, the company NASCAR Canada had been born leading into this agreement. Although the overall process took a bit of time, in September 2006 it was finally finalized, leading to the shutdown of NASCAR and the introduction of the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, carrying the Canadian Tire sponsors the main one for long term, obviously, and gaining the rights with the Sports Network, or TSN for short, for race broadcasts, although not always being live, which will be an important point later in this video. For the next 9 years, NASCAR made its attempt to help grow in diversity with the Canadian Tire Series, continuing to scale Central Canada, while occasionally going to the West and East, on short tracks and road courses. Ironically, the attention seemed to drown a little bit in terms of driver attendance, staying close to the 15 to 25 driver range compared to the 25 to 35 during NASCAR's tenure. However, that didn't stop the series from being decently successful and having multiple fantastic seasons, along with making the car into the shape that it currently stands at today. In early 2015, Canadian Tire made the decision to step down as the series' main sponsor, and 10 months later, the food company known as Pintys Delicious Foods Incorporated was signed on with a new series named Pintys Series, and it remains as the current main sponsor to this day. The series saw its first glance at racing in the United States in 2018 at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire, which put on a great show for just 2 years, with this finish being the most memorable.
Ranger working his way through the corner, LeBay to the inside of Kevin Lacroix for the win in the Visit New Hampshire 100. It's Andrew Ranger. Lacroix stuffs it into the wall. Will he cross the start-finish line? He has got to get the car running. Oh, Kevin Lacroix after contact.
Yeah, whenever I saw this finish live, I couldn't tell if it was funny or depressing, to be honest. But yeah, that pretty much sums up the overall history of the series in a nutshell. Honestly, there weren't really any negative moments through its tenure, albeit some concerning times for driver capacities, marketing processes, and finding a true spot in stock car racing. To all the Canadians out there, you have this guy to thank. One thing that made the organization pop out a lot in its early run was the cars. Novotny admitted many times they got a lot of compliments towards the look of the cars every now and then, for their fiberglass body shells and overall just how they looked for serving a purpose as stock cars. It was almost as if Novotny got it right, and nowadays you could probably go up to some fan of the series and they will most certainly say how much the cars remind them of the old NASCAR in a way. Besides the looks, the way they run and how they look in races is extremely underrated, in my opinion at least. The engines are relatively the same as NASCAR builds, with some detuning to them, more close to 600-ish horsepower and a little more fragile. And when put on the track, it's a perfect showing of how the cars used to run in the old days, and just how short track racing should be. When you look at the car today, it quite literally looks like an 80s style NASCAR car, and maybe a street stock except not as entirely blocky. Back in NASCAR's days, the manufacturer combination was Chevrolet, Dodge, Ford, and Pontiac, with a list right here of the specific ones and their years within the organization, including the Canadian Tire / Pinty series era. When NASCAR's purchase of the organization came around, Dodge started to become a dominant force, winning many championships and rounding up probably 80% of the field. A few Fords and Chevys would pop up occasionally, but the Dodge was simply unbeatable most of the time. As mentioned before, these cars provide almost exactly what the old NASCAR looked across the golden era, staying close together, rubbing against each other a lot, and sometimes the case of a driver simply beating everyone else with a faster car. You could either get a race where someone uses their speed and skill to just destroy the field, or instead a race where everyone stays close together and is sort of packed the whole way. It's either dominance or a super speedway race. There's usually never a middle. Now, the only unfortunate thing about the cars of this series is probably the costs. Building these kind of cars is extremely expensive, and maintaining a budget and building them is very difficult, which can explain why some drivers have had to call it quits on their careers due to having their wallets basically become just entirely empty. There will be a notable example of this later in the video. Add on, some races throughout the years with these kind of cars would have issues relating to drivers staying on the lead lap. I mean, yeah, the series consists of mainly short tracks, but for this to happen, sometimes even consistently, yeah, it's not a fun thing to think about. Once again, the cars are a perfect example of why this series is, in a nutshell, a road all-time classic series with modern fixtures, combining the models, chassis, and overall racing product in the end. Again, the costs aren't great, but regardless, it's one of the more extraordinary details within the series. It's a pure definition of what nostalgia feels like to a traditionalist fan of stock cars. The Pinty series is known for its diversity and background within the drivers. At the beginning of CASCAR's journey, it was mainly a show of Ontario drivers, but slowly across the years, more drivers from other parts of Canada began to show up. That diverse side show a ton in the early seasons as not a single driver won consecutive titles until at least 1998, when Dave Whitlock, one of the winningest drivers at the time, won his third championship and second in a row after winning it the previous season. A driver that first began to race in CASCAR sometime in its early times, he ran all the way through the Super Series every year until its final season, winning 19 races in the number 39 Dodge Charger car. He was a long-tenured driver and team owner for Whitlock Motorsports, so you could say he was CASCAR's Alan Kulwicki in a way. When the Canadian Tire Series was born, Whitlock kept going on for 3 more years, winning one last race in 2009 at Autodrome Saint-Eustache in Quebec, hanging up the helmet at the end of the season. He was one of the strongest and most respected drivers during his career, and with the amount of work he did for and with other racers and teams, it's no wonder his morale in the garage was outstanding. In 1988, an American driver from Michigan named Andy Farr won the Super Series championship. Yeah, ironic, American winning on Canadian grounds. Anyways, along with running a few times in the ARCA Menard series, most notably being involved in this horrifying accident at Daytona during qualifying in 1994, well, that got morbid pretty fast. Anyways, Farr ran in CASCAR for multiple seasons, moving on after a part-time stint in 2002. Arguably considered the best stock car driver and builder in Canadian history, Don Thompson Jr. was one of the greater drivers during CASCAR's later years, specifically the early 2000s. He won the CASCAR Eastern Series championships in both 1999 and 2000, along with racing just as a midfield driver in the Super Series at first. However, when 2001 hit, he scored his first championship with just 1 win in 12 races. And then he won the 2002 title. And then he won the 2003 title, with no wins to add to that. It doesn't even end there. He won 5 straight CASCAR Super Series titles from 2001 to 2005, the first and only driver to ever do such a feat. His streak would be broken, however, in 2006 in a close fight with youngster J.R. Fitzpatrick, who was his teammate at Fitzpatrick Motorsports. Thompson is most remembered for his sportsmanship both on and off the track, his technical mind, and his mentoring of young drivers, including Fitzpatrick. His retirement came in 2011, coming off 2 decades of legendary stats. After CASCAR was purchased by NASCAR, a whole new wave of drivers came in, with at least 3 being most notable from the early years. First Canadian Tire Series champion was Andrew Ranger. A driver from Quebec who actually had an interest in driving open wheel cars as a youngster, he made the move over to stock cars after a lack of sponsorship in Champ Car, now known as IndyCar. Right off the bat, he found success in his memorable number 27 Mopar Dodge car, winning the 2007 Series championship with just 1 win. His diversity of winning on multiple different kinds of tracks was quite a skill for him. A couple of times he chose to run part-time instead of full-time in order to have opportunities of racing in the United States, particularly in the K&N Pro Series West and East, now ARCA Menard Series West and East, the Xfinity Series, and even the Cup Series for 1 race. During his time in Canada, including the Pintys era, Ranger won 3 titles in 2007, 2009, and 2019. And almost every time he ran full-time, he finished inside the top 3 in points, only finishing outside twice. He still races today, now driving for Rick Rare Racing in the number 51 Dodge car, with 30 wins in 14 years, or 143 races. Next up, we have the driver who has the longest and most successful tenure in both the Pinty Series and CASCAR combined, and that's DJ Kennington. From St. Thomas, Ontario, Kennington raced in CASCAR starting in 1998, running full-time until the ending of the organization, scoring 7 wins in the Super Series and joining the Canadian Tire Series in its first season. As of right now, he's run 15 straight full-time seasons in the series, scoring 2 titles in 2010 and 2012, and 23 wins in his well-recognized number 17 Dodge car for his own team, DJK Racing. While most people may think of Kennington as diversity in stock cars, just like Andrew Ranger, 12 starts in the Campbell Truck Series, 51 starts in the Xfinity Series, and 16 starts in the Cup Series, including 2 Daytona 500 starts, finishing 36th in 2017 and 24th in 2018. Another thing as well is his consistency with sponsors, as Castrol has been with him ever since he first began racing. He's a great depiction of a solid Canadian stock car driver, whether it's about his skill on the track or his ability to keep brands on his side, along with being a good mentor. The third of these most notable drivers is arguably the best driver in the Canadian Tire and Pinty Series era, and that's none other than the successful driver and team owner in his famed number 22 Canadian Tire Dodge, Scott Steckly. Also from Ontario, Steckly became a local short track master in the 90s, winning many races across the central part of the province. He joined NASCAR in 1998, scoring just one win in the Super Series. At first, he didn't seem to be an all-around talent, just some local short track dude that could finish well but wasn't exactly a given winner. Well, that completely changed when the Canadian Tire Series came to life. Although it wasn't until the 2007 season finale that he scored a victory, 2008 is when his sudden success began to stir attention. In 9 years, Steckly put on a show, scoring 4 championships and 19 wins in 110 races, including almost 50,000 laps of racing, which is outstandingly bigger than the second best driver. Along with these incredible stats, Steckly was and still is a phenomenal team owner at 22 Racing, arguably the most successful team in Pinty Series history, which has managed to score over 30 wins in 11 seasons of competition, and field drivers such as Jacques Villeneuve, Alex Tagliani, and many other notable current NASCAR drivers. His actions off the track are special as well, helping out with charity work with his main sponsor, Canadian Tire. I would say his role of all drivers in history is the amount of activeness he has for the sport, being a driver, team owner, and helper. He's a great guy too. With those 3 drivers out of the way, many others have popped up throughout the years, and the amount of diversity in their roles and accomplishments is very interesting. LP Dumoulin from Trois-Rivières, Quebec is a current driver who's run 10 straight full-time seasons in the series, continuously driving in the number 47 Dodge car for former National Hockey League player Marc-Andre Bergeron, winning 2 titles, including this recent season, and scoring 11 wins. His inconsistency with going to victory lane for the first little while was quite strange, but in the past 4 seasons, he's won 7 of 42 races, so it has gotten better for the veteran. Jason Hathaway, most notably known for his number 3 Chevrolet car and being my personal favorite driver, ran through 11 straight full-time seasons from 2007 till 2017, scoring 9 wins. His most interesting thing? The number of freaking times he lost a shot at the championship. At first. For the first little while, he was mainly a top 10 pace driver that finished well but lacked consistency and a taste for victory lane. The winning spiced up beginning in 2013, but the championship was just never there for him. However, he made a return to racing after a year of part-time runs and another year of no participation, being replaced by Cole Powell in the same number 3 car, finishing 4th in the standings in 2019, and finally achieving the trophy in the pandemic-shortened 2020 season, winning 3 of 6 races. With him, it will always be that number 3 car with the Rockstar Energy, Snap-on, and Kubota sponsors that stand out to me the most. But when I think of how many times he just couldn't get the biggest fee of them all, until 2020 obviously, that stands out as quite an adversity ride. Remember when I mentioned the car costs earlier and how I would provide an example? Well, here you go, introducing the what-if driver of the series journey, Caden Lapcevich. At first participating in road racing and then midget cars, he ran in local short track championships, winning many times, and eventually joined the Pinty series in 2015 for a few races, showing signs of potential. As soon as he entered full-time in his number 76 Tim Hortons Dodge car for his family's team in 2016, friendly reminder that he was just 16 at the time, the kid skyrocketed into stock car fame. 3 wins and a championship in just his first season. Okay, whoa, was this kid the real deal? Okay, maybe give him another year. 2017 rolls around, 3 more wins and a 3rd place points finish. Alright, this kid is definitely the real deal. Hell, he had been accepted as a member of the NASCAR Next program before the season had even started. The attention he was receiving was outstanding, and many counted on him as one of the next up-and-coming drivers in NASCAR. Until the sad news that came out in 2018. Along with his father and team owner, he revealed that due to financial concerns, he wouldn't be able to continue racing for the time being. Although he was able to put himself in multiple races at short tracks across the United States, his chance of becoming a next-level NASCAR driver was suddenly destroyed. Ever since then, he's competed in multiple late model races across America, but he hasn't popped up in the Pinty series. A serious story of what if and what could have been. To be fair, he does have a brother who currently races in the series named Trayton, and he's looking very good. Be on the lookout for him when the 2022 season arrives. Meet the Denny Hamlin, or maybe Kyle Busch, of the Pinty series, Kevin Lacroix. From Stanislaus, Quebec, Lacroix's luck in clinching the championship has been absurdly bad, and it honestly shouldn't be. In 73 starts from 6 full-time seasons and a short debut campaign in 2015, he has 14 wins and 12 poles, but not one single championship. Finished 4th in 2016, 2nd in 2017, 5th in 2018, 2nd in 2019 and 2020, and 6th in the recent 2021 season. Half of his full-time campaigns have been runner-up finishes. Half of them. Almost every single time he's been in the points lead towards the end of the season, something goes wrong. It showed quite well this year. He would finish well, then DNF, then finish well, then DNF, and the pattern would continue. Personally, I would consider him to be currently the greatest Pinty Series driver without a championship. Now, that's what makes me call him Denny Hamlin. In saying Kyle Busch, however, it's his racing style. Extremely aggressive, especially in his attitude. If you want proof, just take a look at his reaction after being bump and run by Alex Labay at Riverside in 2017.
They touched and LeBay's going to take the win. Lacroix will have to settle for second.
And it was lap number 300. Oh my goodness!
Lacroix is not happy with your race winner. Some fireworks after the checkered flag here in Riverside.
You'll be seeing an explanation for that one later in the video. Anyways, many other known drivers have run through the series, including 2017 champion and current Xfinity Series driver Alex Labay, current 10-time race winner and series veteran and former open-wheel driver Alex Tagliani, longtime NASCAR and Pinty Series veteran Mark Dilley, and even some higher-end NASCAR drivers such as Austin Dillon, Tony Stewart, Christopher Bell, Rafael Lessard, Kaz Grella, and others. Even some women drivers have popped up in recent years, most recently one of them being Julia Landauer, who ran 10 races in between 2018 and 2019, scoring one top 10 finish. Just another great aspect of why the Pinty Series is so special. Diversity is super important, and we've got it over here in Canada with our stock car racing. We've already talked about the tracks quite a bit, but to me it feels like it would make a bit of sense to discuss some of the more specific tracks that the series has run during its time, because of their roles and historical aspect of showing off circuit diversity. As mentioned before, Tony Novotny was the owner of Delaware Speedway just before NASCAR was established, and when it was established, he brought the organization over for a combination of being the NASCAR owner and the track owner. When the Speedway was built in the early 1950s by Hugh Brody, it was originally a quarter-mile dirt track, and it stayed that way for 8 years, before swapping over to asphalt in 1960. Another 9 years later, the track became what it is now, a half-mile asphalt short track about 2.5 hours away from the city of Toronto. Delaware is called both the birthplace of NASCAR and a Canadian racing landmark. The track remained as a premium figure on NASCAR series schedules through its entire running, providing great racing with a similar style to Martinsville Speedway, with the exception of more area to race on, of course. When NASCAR was gone and the Canadian Tire Series came along, Delaware decided to move their focus to their regular, weekly racing late models, hoping to innovate with a local atmosphere. However, a return was done in 2009, and the Canadian Tire Series ran from that year until 2013, taking another break until 2017, and then making another return for the recent 2021 season, running the final 3 races and putting on an incredible show in each one, including multiple crashes, terrific battles, and even a number of infield fisticuffs. Just take a look at what happened in the second of these 3 races.
To get the number 22. They are hammering on the 22. There's Jackson. Come on, Izzy. Here we go. Get it on the front straightaway. It's the Fall Brawl preview.
Cameron getting out of there. Wow, other teams coming in to try to separate them. We got a brawl on pit road just behind TJ Kennington's car.
Here comes Fritz into the mix. Get you some, Fritz. Holy moly.
Along with those highlights, whenever I was taking a look online, I found this strange sequence of events from a 1992 NASCAR race. Just take a look for yourself.
Front battle for a while. Long way to go. Oh, look at this. John Gaunt in the 30 up on the side and back down on the wheels, and Mark Wilson slides in here. David Q alongside him. John Gaunt wants to get to his pit. Look at the ditch here. We've had a lot of rain. Well, just wade right through it. Up about waist deep. Reminds me of the landings in Normandy here.
That'll cool them out in a hurry.
Pit here with what appears. Oh, I wish they wouldn't do that. That is really dangerous to do it.
So yeah, that little sequence featured a near flip, a D-Day Normandy flashback, and an engine going kaboom. I just had to put it in here. Anyways, back on task. The track is currently underway with renovations for the upcoming year, paving over a surface that is, or eventually was, 60 years old. In Hamilton, Ontario lies a 1/3 mile short track known as Flamborough Speedway, which lasted just 2 years in the NASCAR Super Series during its inaugural campaigns, and then ceased to exist for just local weekly racing. That was until 2020 when the track made its first return, running a doubleheader during the pandemic-shortened season, and also running a single race in the recent season. Although the fields didn't have great numbers, the races were still pretty decent. The city of Toronto first popped up in NASCAR with the Super Series race at the Exhibition Stadium, which was mainly used for baseball, football, and soccer during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yup, Canada had its own 2022 Busch Clash type of races in the 20th century. The track known as CNE Speedway only had one NASCAR race and was mainly a priority for NASCAR Grand National and weekly late model races during the 50s and 60s. Unfortunately, 1966 saw the ending of racing at the stadium, and Toronto never saw NASCAR action ever again. Until someone got the incredible idea of a street circuit in 1999. That year, the Super Series made its debut on what is now known as Exhibition Place, a road course on Lakeshore Boulevard and several side roads, which has been a stake in IndyCar racing for many decades. Until Until 2005, NASCAR went to the track every year, and when NASCAR stepped in for the purchase, the circuit was wiped out of people's minds for another 4 years. In 2010, however, the Canadian Tire Series confirmed its return to the circuit, running for 2 straight seasons, then calling another hiatus until the Pinty Series said hello again, keeping the track on a consistent run for once with the name Pintys Grand Prix of Toronto. Of course, being a large city when the pandemic struck, the track was removed from the schedule for both 2020 and 2021. Perhaps we'll see a return in the future, who knows. More street circuits began to pop up in NASCAR during the early 2000s, including running alongside IndyCar once more in Vancouver, British Columbia for 4 years, and running just 2 races at Circuit Trois-Rivières, GP3R for short, in Trois-Rivières, Quebec. Trois-Rivières has remained a permanent spot on the Canadian Tire and Pinty Series schedule until, of course, the pandemic, although a race was done this past season. I would personally argue that this is the best street circuit of them all, as these races always turn out extremely intense and have great finishes. One of the more memorable moments from this track is from 2014 when Xavier Kubal made tire-to-tire contact with another car, sending his machine for a wild tumble down one of the straightaways. Quite literally tore his car to shreds all the way down to the chassis, almost exposing him. Just crazy. Oh, and I almost forgot. The series ran on an airport circuit during its early time. Not even kidding, Edmonton, Alberta had an old airport called the Edmonton City Centre Airport, and IndyCar decided to plop a track in the area. The Canadian Tire Series joined in 2007, running until 2012 before ending its run in 2013 alongside IndyCar. And of course, we can't forget Canadian Tire Motorsport Park and Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, both very well-known tracks that have and did run a good time in both NASCAR and the Pinty Series. Motorsport, reminder that it's short for Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, like I said earlier, originally had a combo between an oval and a road course until the oval was removed for a new development center building in 2013. Ever since, the road course has remained on the Pinty Series schedule, with the pandemic coming in hard again for the past 2 seasons. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve had just barely made it onto the NASCAR Super Series schedule in its final year. When the Canadian Tire Series formed, it hopped on, running for 6 years before NASCAR decided to end its partnership altogether with the circuit for good. I still dislike that decision very much to this day, but perhaps we'll save that for a future video. Now, there are 2 more tracks I'm going to get into here. Both are on a personal end and have similarities in losing a spot on recent schedules, however there is an obvious difference. First up is Riverside International Speedway in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, a 1/3 of a mile short track that gave way for the return of national stock car racing to Atlantic, Canada in 2007 after several years of nothing due to the closure of a NASCAR agreement. This is my local short track, to clarify. I went to 2 races, one in 2016 and the last one in 2019, won by Caden Lapsevich and Jason Hathaway respectively. As the closest track to home, it was my first taste of NASCAR, as I still hadn't gotten the opportunity to go to the United States for a race at the time. Both races were excellent, and what I can remember best are the memories of the failure of keeping my eyes in a consistent spot, isn't having to look everywhere for the one odd situation to happen, like a crash, and seeing my favorite driver win off a late restart in what now looks to be the final race to be held at the track. It's a little sad now that I think about it, but I'm just happy I got to experience some form of NASCAR for myself. To be fair though, earlier that same year I did manage to finally go to Daytona Speedweeks for the first time, albeit being sick the whole way. Although Riverside's driver attendances weren't a good look, the track always put on a great show, especially in 2017. I did show a small clip earlier of the finish, but honestly, it deserves an explanation. Our race postponed until the next day due to rain, Kevin Lacroix dominated the whole race, leading all but 49 laps. However, the eventual champion of the same season, Alex Labbe, is now at the front, fighting against Lacroix within the final 30 laps. Although Lacroix was able to hang on in first for the rest of the way, Labbe stayed on his rear bumper no matter what. So what happens on the final lap? He moves him up the track, pulling off the classic bump and run move on Lacroix in turn 3, sailing to victory in front of a shocked and impressed crowd under the sunlight. Wow, crazy finish, the crowd is going wild, and Labbe's crew were celebrating in disbelief. And then the cameras moved to the backstretch. What happens next? It looked as though Lacroix was trying to drive his car through Labbe's window net. That just goes to show what can happen after a bump and run. Now do you see why I called Lacroix both Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch? Take that however you want. Now, for the second and final track I'm going to get to here, it has quite the strange story to it. 0.625 mile short track built in the 1960s, originally a dirt track but swapped to asphalt after 1 year, it hosted the good old weekly racing for many decades. NASCAR held races every year from 1998 till 2006 when the track was bought by a developer group, with the goal again NASCAR to come over, specifically the Nationwide Series. Sadly, the choice went to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. However, the Canadian Tire Series agreed to run at the track, hosting races in 2007 and 2008, before the track was closed in 2009. For about 5 years, Cayuga Speedway, the name of it at the time, was laid in harsh conditions. With the potential of the track disappearing into the wilderness for good, another group of businessmen chose to purchase the track, and for the next 2 years, it was rebuilt and ready to go in 2017 with the new Jukasa Motor Speedway name. The Pinty Series gladly returned to the track in the same year, and from then on until 2020, Jukasa hosted the championship finale, which I believe was one of the best decisions in the series history. Every year saw many championship implications and lots of opportunities for bump and run finishes, including one 2019 where Jason Hathaway and Brett Taylor put on a great show for the win, with Taylor giving Hathaway one final bump in turn 3 on the last lap, scoring the win, and yes, I was obviously frustrated. Even though the track hosted a doubleheader finale in the shortened 2020 season, sad news broke out just 2 months before this video, revealing that Chicastic would be closed down entirely. A reason wasn't fully given out, but with the pandemic going on, there was no doubt that financial concerns were the case. Serious case of unfortunate circumstances. Personally, it's a bit of a gut punch because of how underrated the track really was. Being a championship finale for a few years, Chicastic was always the track I was personally most looking forward to, and many other fans were as well. On the day of the closure news, I saw many people online showing lots of grief and sadness, and it felt extremely relatable. With nothing looking good for the track right now, I am curious to know if there's still a chance for someone to step in and fix things. If so, oh man, would it ever be a blessing. If not, then the Pinty series may have just lost one of its greatest tracks in history. Well, that about sums it all up right there. How it all got started, the type of racing it provided, the type of cars used, the diversity across the drivers that came into the NASCAR organization and Pinty series every so often, and the different kinds of tracks that show great racing regardless for its shape or distance. However, it still begs the title, why the NASCAR Pinty series deserves much more attention. Have we truly answered that? Well, I would say yes, but I also would say we're not done just yet. As a way of ending this off, I believe that several improvements should be made, specifically towards the broadcasts of the race. Just a warning, I may get a little spicy and my opinions could get a little haywire, but please hear me out. I think that most or all of the races should be broadcast on live TV. The way it used to be for many years, the series would rely on TSN across the country, Canada to be specific, to broadcast a tape delay about a week after the actual race date. Why exactly would this happen? It wouldn't surprise me if finances were the reason, but honestly, I still don't see why the races aren't put on the broadcast like the second they start. Well, to be fair, they kind of are, but in a way, you know what I mean. When the broadcast schedules were released this past summer, it was revealed that you could watch the races live if you had TSN Go or NBC Sports Gold in America. Now, I'm okay with taking that subscription just to get an opportunity to watch at all, especially live, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Does the subscription money get handed over to the series management or something? Or am I just sounding stupid because I suck at understanding finances? I honestly don't really know, man. If someone actually could explain it to me though, that could actually make this a lot more understanding. Okay, but seriously though, how are you supposed to earn proper publicity by making people buy a monthly subscription to watch races live that aren't even every week, rather every 3 to 4 weeks at best unless there's a double header? Hell, why bother with a tape delay? No one is going to be interested in that unless maybe you missed the race or something, sure, but regardless, if it would financially become a disaster to be live like right there, then maybe figure out a solution. I really don't want to get harsh here, but the opportunity for attention without causing some form of small havoc with a possibly interested viewer is literally right there. With everything I've discussed in this, one decision with the series could gravely change the way it's looked at. Now, to clarify, I do understand that the current pandemic has caused many issues, especially with the series scheduling. That's okay, but please take note of my points whether I may be correct or not at any of them. I know there are people out there who have a traditionalist mindset. They want the old racing back. They want the roots in NASCAR back. Ironic because if you search on NASCAR roots, there's a website for it with Pintys in it, so there you go. They want good old short track racing. They want beating and banging. They want to see driver skills and car speed be the true beast in solving a race. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen in today's NASCAR at all, but it's been visibly infrequent at times. With the next gen coming up soon in the Cup Series, however, that could change entirely. Who knows? It's a mystery. But let me ask you this. Do you like short track racing, hell even some road course action, even street circuit action? Do you like aggressive beating and banging, bumper to bumper and bump and run racing? Do you like the way the old NASCAR was in terms of its racing product? Do you like diversity? Then this series is for you. Sure, if you're in America and this has piqued your interest, you may need to purchase an NBC subscription because, well, money sucks and it's pain. There truly is diversity in motorsports, from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula 1 to motocross, and so much more. With different levels being in each every form of it, the Pinty series just seems to be a low-level form of attempting to remain in the roots of what motorsports were. Maybe it's because it's in another country, unlike the United States where NASCAR was formed. That's reasonable. But the thing is, with all the proof and justice that has been attempted and shown in this video, I think there should be a hell of a lot more respect towards this series. It deserves it rightfully so. Canada does hold a special place in motorsports, regardless of how lackluster it may seem or feel in the media and in general. Hell, stock car racing in general across the country as a whole should have respect and attention towards it, especially due to how much it's been affected by the pandemic. Jacassa. Just like the Pintys commercial that comes on every now and then on TSN in Canada when they say, "Pintys, making great food fun." I then think, Pintys making great racing fun. It's just so inspirational, eh? Okay, I'll shut up. Anyways, that officially does it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was an honor to create, and if you're a Pinty series fan watching this, I hope this made you even more of a fan and raised your interest even more. If you're not a fan, or perhaps live in the United States or another place, then this hopefully gave you an even bigger idea of the vast diversity that motorsports can feature. Don't forget to hit that like button, click the subscribe button along with the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything else, and also share with your buddies to get the word out. My name is Rigzer, or Reeks for short, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.